The EFF loves socialism. They want the government to nationalize mines and farms. They assume that owning these things will make everyone's life better. They want you to look to China, Russia, Cuba, and Venezuela for guidance.
We want to be like Cuba and South Africa. We unashamedly want to pursue a progressive socialist agenda.
Our policies are almost the Chinese policies. The Chinese policies are clear. And that's what we want to do here in South Africa.
When we live here, you see any beautiful piece of land. You like it, occupy it. It belongs to you. It is your land. It is the land of our forefathers.
The EFF wants you ignorant of the facts because ignorant citizens vote for rubbish politicians. Welcome to Citizen Concerned, where we remind you to beware of the comrades. Hey, if you like the videos we make here, please subscribe to our channel, like the videos, leave a comment, share. It makes me feel so happy, and it also helps YouTube to recommend this content to more citizens. To show that we don't need the land to be rich, I have examples of interest, starting off with Japan. Japan is a volcanic and mountainous island with very little farming and low natural resources. Japan imports food for its people and its raw materials for its industry. That's right, they don't even have minerals to support their manufacturing industry. Less than 80 years ago, Japan had lost too much due to World War II. 2 nuclear bombs had flattened Nagasaki and Hiroshima. But instead of holding a grudge against America, the Japanese decided to identify why the Americans were so advanced. And through education, government policies aimed at economic growth, and dedication to their work, decades later, they are among the most advanced economies in the world, ranking at number 3 in terms of GDP. They manufacture cars, robots, software, and many other items. The Japanese people don't focus on farms and minerals, but they understand the value of using intellect and skill to drive industrial growth. Basically, no amount of land will make you rich if you don't know how to work it. Now let's look at Singapore. As recent as 1965, Singapore was one of the poorest countries on earth. Their land has minute natural resources, but through education, good government policies, and relying on the brightest people in the country, not the ones who are loyal to the comrades, but rather the brightest, they changed their fortunes. They focused on learning from the most advanced and developed countries in the world, and today they rank higher than South Africa, specializing in electronics, services, and chemicals. What about South Korea? South Korea has few mineral resources. In the 1950s, it mainly focused on farming, and this kept it underdeveloped. Through education and industrialization, they are big on manufacturing cars, phones, computers, just to name a few. Government policies, education, and the desire to be like the Western countries is what elevated them out of poverty. South Korea is in the top 10 of countries that export what they make. It was a country focused on subsistence farming just 60 years ago, and yet Malema wants us to focus on farming today. These are people that will prosper wherever they go in the world, or even in their own countries, not through affirmative action, not through BEE, but through education and determination. While these countries export their Samsung, Kias, Hyundais, and Sonys, South Africa imports from them because we don't have our own. The countries that will succeed in the future are countries that export their own products, not those who simply import from everyone. But Julius Malema has so many convinced that the future and prosperity of Black South Africans lie solely in the land. He wants the farms and the mines. And if he becomes the president, his true colors will come out. And by then, I fear that it may be too late to do anything about it. Speaking out against Julius Malema or the EFF will result in imprisonment or disappearances.
EFF Deputy President Floyd Shivambu has been caught on camera manhandling a journalist outside Parliament. Here's that video.
Leave my stuff alone. Leave my stuff alone. Leave my stuff alone. Leave my stuff alone. I'll put you on for harassment. Leave my stuff alone. Leave my stuff alone.
They're not bringing our parrot back. Who's this one now? What is the problem? What is the fucking problem? Don't do that. Move! Move! Piece of shit! Move! 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 Fighters! Fighters! I'm a potato! Fighters! 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 I tell about you! I'm a potato!
These are all the traits that are found in countries that Malema loves and supports. Countries like Zimbabwe, like China, Russia, Cuba.
Damara has been missing since Monday. His family says he was abducted from a barber shop by unknown assailants. He's been repeatedly arrested and beaten in the past for staging protests demanding the resignation of President Robert Mugabe.
The famously outspoken 56-year-old making headlines in October after delivering a speech critical of the Chinese government, accusing financial regulators of suffocating innovation and likes to behaving like pawn shops.
根本就不知道中国人一天天生活的跟猪似的，一点人权都没有。大家都说这个律师是一个高风险的职业，高危职，或者是被失踪了，被关精神病院了。 拘留所呀，这些情况就是随时有可能就发生。
And don't get me started on the political life in socialist countries. Mugabe was in power since 1980, first as prime minister, then as president from 1987, until he was forcibly removed by one of his own comrades in 2017, after more than 30 years of ruling. Still on the terrifying political life in socialist countries, Putin has been in power since 2000, and he has recently changed the constitution to allow him to run for re-election in 2024, and then again in 2030. Russia also punishes those who criticize their leaders.
Ответы получились особенными. И я вам сразу объясню, что сегодня отвечать на такой вопрос в России немного небезопасно. Например, за использование слова «война» вместо «специальная военная операция», как хотят этого российские власти, человек может получить штраф или...
Ну, как бы нет. Но так за свободу слова сейчас, не знаю, лентами делают, сажают, штраф выписывают, вот это все.
Смотря что считаете свободой слова. Внутренняя свобода, которая во мне находится, конечно, есть. По сути, я могу сделать вообще что угодно. Дальше все зависит от последствий, к которым я должен быть готов.
Все свобода слова, не могу сказать, ограниченная, очень ограниченная. Не только цензурой, но и самоцензурой чаще.
Скорее нет, чем да.
А почему так?
Потому что жизнь так.
Ну, хотя бы тема. Тематика того, о чем нельзя говорить.
Ну, все прекрасно об этом знают.
Нет.
Нет. Почему?
Ну, какая свобода слова? Все свободные СМИ покинули Россию. Какая свобода слова?
А какие были, которые покинули?
Ну, послушайте, начиная от телеканала «Дождь», заканчивая тем, что происходит с условной «Новой газетой» или что происходило с «Коммерсантом», о какой свободе слова мы можем говорить вообще?
Xi Jinping has been in power since 2013, and he is in his third term now. He has amassed so much power now that he cannot be removed. Conveniently, in 2018, term limits were removed from the constitution, meaning Xi Jinping can now rule China until he dies.
A constitutional amendment to abolish presidential term limits. President Xi, already one of the most powerful Chinese leaders in decades, will now be able to rule indefinitely, perhaps for life.
China also practices censorship, hence there is no Facebook, no Netflix, YouTube, Google, or even WhatsApp. Why? Because they want to control what their people can see, what their people can hear, and they want to monitor all internet users where if you say anything against a comrade, you'll be taught some manners. Christians in China suffer persecution. They must be approved to preach. Carrying or even selling a Bible is banned, among many other restrictions.
Xu Yonghai has run this underground church in Beijing since 1989. He's been to prison or re-education through labor camps 3 times because of his beliefs.
China has been scrutinized and criticized by the international community for detention of Muslims.
Fidel Castro ruled Cuba from 1959 until 2008. Just imagine 49 years with one president. And after all of that, when people thought, okay, now we're going to have a breather, his brother, Raul Castro, became the president. And those who tried to criticize Fidel Castro suffered harsh punishments. Many in Cuba celebrated the death of Castro because of the oppression that they faced under his reign.
The champagne bottle Rebecca Sosa has waited decades to open, a gift from her late father.
And it was hidden for all those years, open only when Fidel dies.
Fidel Castro's death was highly anticipated, wished for, in no small part because of the pain when families were forced to split.
Buenos días, te tengo buenas noticias.
A woman wasn't sure her mother would understand the historic event that just took place.
Se cayó Fidel Castro. Se cayó Fidel Castro.
But her smile said it all.
I was a university student, engineering, and when I was about to graduate, they demanded from me political integration to the communist organization. I said, no, I am a Catholic, I'm not, and I don't like communism. And they say, don't tell me. So I got in trouble. They expelled me from the university and started persecuting me, and that was my first arrest. I escaped twice from prison.
I'm going to speak in English about what's going on in Cuba because I don't hear a lot of English speakers talking about this, and my generation talking about this. Cuba has been under dictatorship for 62 years. So people, for the last 62 years, since 1960s and 1958, around there, people started making homemade boats that we call lanchas and have bringing them to the coast of Florida seeking shelter. Because us Cubans, we don't complain about anything. It takes a lot for us to complain. And this, I'm sick and tired of it. So let me tell you what's going on. There's no coffins for dead bodies. If you have a dead family member, they get pronounced dead. They get wrapped in a bed sheet. You get delivered the dead body, and you have to take it home with you. What you do with the body, they don't care. You have to figure it out. If you don't have a car, they don't provide transportation, and you have to take the dead body home walking. There's no drinking water. Food costs $200 US. A pound of rice costs $200 US. Canadian dollars is the currency of Cuba right now. If you don't have family here in the United States to give you money, you have to figure it out. You have to figure it out. Because the only way you can get money in Cuba is if you get it sent to you by here. They shut off their light and water at 7. As soon as the sun goes down, your electricity gets shut. Internet is shut right now worldwide in Cuba. That's why we're not getting any new news. But we have family there. There's no medication, there's no Advil, there's no antibiotics, there's no butterfly needles, there's no IVs, there's nothing.
Are you seeing the pattern here? Like this addiction to power is a staple of socialist leaders. Sooner or later, they become unmovable, like you cannot remove them from power, all while criticizing them results in severe punishments. There are barely any foreign companies in Cuba since all means of production were nationalized by Fidel Castro. Hence, everything is run by the government. Basically, there's no industry in Cuba and barely any new cars because no one has the money to import new cars.
Gonzalez has been making shoes by hand since he was 12.
I made this pair as a gift to my son's friend.
That friend will be giving him temporary room and board in Argentina, to where he is about to migrate. He tells me it will be hard to leave behind his home, even though it is literally falling apart. His children and his wife migrated long ago, but he never wanted to leave Cuba. Until now.
For the last 60 years, our leadership has told us that things will improve, that we'll overcome all obstacles. But we see the contrary. Every day things get worse. We have less food, more social problems.
Gonzalez is lucky. He has a visa to enter his country of destination.
The Cuban government is now starting to allow private businesses because they have seen that socialism is dangerous and dumb. Cubans are running away from Cuban poverty just like Zimbabweans are running from poverty in Zimbabwe. Groceries are so expensive in Cuba that Cubans are needing to depend on their relatives in America to bring them groceries, just as the relationship we're seeing here in South Africa and Zimbabwe, where Zimbabweans cannot afford the groceries in their own country and are needing to depend on their relatives in South Africa to bring them groceries.
His tempers are short from queuing most of the day, in this case for 2 bottles of oil. Scarce items are sold with a ration card, but most things are no longer subsidized.
I've been here since 5 a.m. and I've got number 117. See?
It's now 10 a.m. and there are at least 800 people in line hoping to buy chicken.
Unfortunately, while Cubans are poor, the Castro family was said to be worth hundreds of millions in dollars. While most of the citizens drive cars that are older than 50 years old, Fidel Castro's grandson filmed himself in a Mercedes. People are driving old, like not 5 years old, not 15 years old, 50-year-old cars. Yet this gentleman decides to film himself driving what? A Mercedes. He later apologized for this on social media because he was flaunting his wealth when the rest of the country was suffering. The hypocrisy. And such hypocritical behavior is not special or unique to Fidel Castro's grandson. This is very common among socialists. They want everyone to be equal. We should all be equal in suffering while they drive around in luxurious cars, while they experience just a multitude of luxury in their lives. Of course, just like in any incompetent government, they have what? Power outages, aka load shedding. With all of this knowledge available for free, how does the EFF still get support? Like, how? Have you guys seen the conditions of the countries I mentioned? Venezuela is ranked 72 with a GDP of 96 billion. Cuba is ranked 66 with a GDP of $107 billion. South Africa is ranked 38 with a GDP of $400 billion. These countries rank lower than South Africa economically, and you want us to be like them? South Africa is in the top 50. Venezuela and Cuba are not, but EFF thinks we should be like them. We need to be the best. In order to do that, we should try to be like the best, not like countries who are worse than us. The truth of the matter is, innovation and productivity beats ownership of land. Africa is not poor because of white people having all of our land. Africa is poor because of incompetence, because of corruption, and because of hatred. South Africa does not need more division, it needs unity. The wealth in the world is no longer strictly bound to land only. Wealth generation has evolved to allow for anyone to rise out of poverty, as long as the government policies allow for that. Human beings are no longer in small villages where the chief owns the means of production. We are global, black, white, Asian, it doesn't matter. With enough educational skill and understanding, we all can make something of ourselves. But not all of us will. No, not all of us will. Some choose to act like victims, ignoring the one true fact of life. The greatest asset any person will have is his intellect and his body. What I've just outlined above is to show you the dangers of being narrow-minded when it comes to politics and economics. That is why education is important. History is important, because when people like Malema come to power, there's a risk that the machetes will do all the talking. Good education, good government policies, and entrepreneurship is a way that is proven to lift people out of poverty. A free market is what we need, not Malema's delusions of being an intellectual and revolutionary. Socialism does not work. Economically, Russia and China don't even practice socialism. Entrepreneurship is a big contributor to why China is doing so well economically. So what does Malema like so much about China? Remember, South Africa, Malema has never made anything in his life. He has not built anything, and yet SARS seized properties from him for not paying taxes totaling 18 million rand. If he owed SARS 18 million in taxes, that means tens, if not hundreds of millions have already passed through his hands. But where did all of that money come from? You must ask questions. In a socialist state, the newspapers would have not reported on this issue. History is full of people like Malema, and if there is anything that history tells us of people like him, is beware of the comrades.